Welcome back to the D.H.E. show, where we talk about building empires without sacrificing on bedtime stories. Every episode, we are going to give you 2 to 4 actionable things that you can do today to start driving the needle in your business or in your personal life. We are business people, we're entrepreneurs, but we're also dads and husbands, and to us, dads and husbands is almost more important because what is the point of building these businesses? We're not bringing our family along with us. And so that is the whole premise of the show. That is what we're here to do. In today's episode, we're going to talk all about our top 3 books that we recommend for the new year. Ole and I are enormous readers. We read all the time, all sorts of stuff. I am at my desk at home. I've got the E-Myth. I've got Psychology of Money. I got The Alchemist. I got all sorts of stuff here because books give us perspective on new ways of doing things. It teaches us things that maybe we've never thought of before. It gives you a glimpse of how someone else has accomplished whatever it is that you're trying to do too. And we thought, why not kick off our book series with our top 3 books, our 3 favorite ones. One of the books we're going to go about or talk about in the video I just flashed on the screen. But that's where we're at. If you're new here, welcome again. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Would absolutely appreciate so much if you could leave us a review and let us know what you liked about the show. Do you like any books that we talked about? What do we need to read next? We are always on the hunt for our next piece of literature that we would like to read. And so drop a comment. Let us know. Engage with us. We also have a Facebook group called the D.H.E. Tribe where we have conversations like this every single day, helping people achieve their goals, their dreams, fix their business, get to wherever it is that they're trying to go. So we'd love to have you there as well. If you are interested in looking for a group of people, it's free. That just can help you connect with you and help take things to the next level. So without any more rambling from me, let's just jump into the show. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, or just gentlemen, welcome back to the D.H.E. podcast, Dad, Husband, Entrepreneur. For those of you that are new, welcome. For those of you that have been hanging around with us, listening to some wild episodes, going across the board, we are trying to get a little bit better here, Matt, right? We're trying to get a little bit more focused on what we're going to discuss. So the goal here moving forward is maybe a little bit shorter, a little bit more concise, direct to the point. So
actionable information, tips, tricks.
Yes.
Things that you can take action on. Not just us rambling.
Yeah, I mean, we like to ramble, but we're going to save that. Maybe we'll just release a podcast every once in a while. It's a ramble podcast. But today's episode, my name is Ole Hovde. I am the co-host of the D.H.E. podcast. This is how I define myself. This is my identity in the world. I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm an entrepreneur. Those are the 3 things I see myself as. And I am here with
another D.H.E. Matt with you guys again. We're already wandering.
How are we wandering?
I don't know.
We're doing an intro.
I get so tripped up on this intro whenever you're like it, and I'm with
you.
I know.
Matt Adelman. Okay.
I got a
So
problem.
since Matt can't do an introduction today because I've been all whipped out of shape all morning about dumb shit, we are here today. We have a podcast. So one of the things that I get asked quite frequently is book recommendations. Do you have a book recommendation? Do you, as an entrepreneur or as a dad, what do you recommend that I read? And so today we're going to talk about 3 books. Each one of us have a couple of books that influential to us in both being a dad, a husband, and an entrepreneur. So this is going to hit kind of all of those buckets. You will probably notice a little bit of a theme with the books that I have read that have become influential in my life and the books that I tell everybody to read. In fact, yesterday I was on the phone with a guy, and the first thing I said to him, not the first thing, but 10 minutes in the conversation, I go, stop, go read these 2 books and call me back. But Matt, what is the of the 3 books, we'll start with your first book. What is the number 1 most influential book that you have read in this realm, being a dad, husband, and entrepreneur?
I'm going first.
I just asked a question.
So I think it's on the entrepreneur side, not as much the dad, the husband side, but it's called The Psychology of Money. Have you ever heard of it before?
No, but I'm very intrigued because money is highly psychological. So please go on.
So I'm blanking on the author's name right now. His last name is Housel, I believe. The big takeaway, so he goes through and basically explains where money came from, why it was created, the idea of you're going to give somebody a loan or mortgage or give them money in return for something. Like, it's a very odd concept if you think about it. We used to just trade goods, right? We would trade, here's a bunch of knives for a bunch of tools, right? Like way back in the caveman
Purely bartering, yep.
Right? And at some point we flipped to this money thing. Everything we do today is about money. Trading money, doing stuff with money, right? And so the whole psychology behind it, the part that really sticks out for me, talks about Warren Buffett in the book. And he talks about so Warren Buffett is I don't even know what position he is for world's richest men anymore.
4th, 5th wealthiest in the world, yeah.
Right, like close to 100 billion. And he didn't pass the billion mark until he was like 65.
I mean, that was 30 years ago. Isn't he 95 right now?
But it was also 40 years after he started.
Yeah, I mean, so touche.
Right? And so the world's greatest investor took 40 years to get to $1 billion, which is, a shit ton of money, right? Like, it's absurd amount of money. But still, when you think about Warren Buffett, you think he's been this prodigy forever and ever and ever. And it wasn't even so much Warren Buffett in this example as much as it was, if you do something good for 40 years and you let the money compound and do what it's supposed to, it adds up. It adds up. And so my big takeaway from the book was like, be really smart with what you're doing right now. Like you feel like that dollar doesn't matter, or it's not a thing against Starbucks coffee, but everyone says like, cut out the Starbucks coffee, take that $5 a week and go invest it. If you actually do that over 40 years, it is a massive difference.
When was this book written?
In the last few years.
Okay. Why would a dad, husband, entrepreneur want to pick that book up? What are they going to get out of it? And on a scale of 1 being boring as hell textbook, 10 being actually enjoyable to read, where does it rate on that 1 to 10?
For me, it was like a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
I'm very intrigued in money and wealth and just how do you create it and what do you do with it. But also, like, it's not that important. And so the book kind of balances all that stuff out. Like, why do we care so much about it? And if you do, like, here's some things that you can be thinking about to do differently or add into your thing. It gave me a long-term perspective on stuff. Like, slow the hell down, relax, just make smart decisions today. Just make smart decisions tomorrow, and you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine in 20 or 30 years.
I think there's a lot to be said right there in that book with the make smart decisions today. And just that is a overwhelming. I'm thinking like we need to put that up on the wall over here because it's a really good way. Like, just make smart decisions today. You don't need to worry about tomorrow. You don't need to worry about the next day. And I think, in that book, do they address the fact that we all want, or not all, but many of us tend to have this belief that we need to accomplish everything tomorrow. So do they talk about it's that Warren Buffett perspective?
Not only that you need to accomplish it tomorrow, this weird belief, but like, it's not even possible. There are overnight successes. I get it. But we're talking like 0.0%, 0.0001, like infinitesimally small overnight successes. Almost everything good and big in this world takes time. It just does. And so, like, having that mindset, even with what we're doing with Switchback, it's going to take time. It just will. Like, there's no way to force yourself into a big company or, a retirement account that you can retire with. You can't force yourself into any, short of winning the lottery. Again, I get it. There are exceptions, but not very often.
I mean, to that point, I thought it was funny. The other day, I ran into a guy at the airport that I used to work with, and he's like, "How are things going?" I'm like, "Absolutely fucking terrible." And he just kind of looked at me because, right, nobody really says that, but the truth is, it sucks right now. I mean, it's getting better, but no different than investing in that sense of there's going to be great years, there's going to be bad years, and like, just don't panic. As long as you know you're doing the right things, it's gonna even out. So, what was the one biggest takeaway out of everything you just said? The one biggest takeaway in that book?
The biggest takeaway for me again was just stop worrying about getting to some number in your accounts. It doesn't matter today necessarily. Like, live the life that you're comfortable living, but make the smart decisions and plan for the long term.
Yep. I like it.
All right, your turn. What's book number 1 for you?
Book number 1 is tough because I love to read. Absolutely love to devour knowledge. Number one is going to be...
It's not number one. It's just the first one you're talking about.
The first one I'm going to talk about, and the one that probably is the best book I've read in the last 10 years, is a book by James Altucher called Choose Yourself. It is a unbelievably easy read. You can knock it out in 3 to 4 hours if you sit down, probably quicker than that if you're a fast reader. But the genesis of the book is exactly what the title is. It's choosing yourself over allowing others to dictate your success. And so throughout the entire book, he goes through example after example of people that just said, you know what? I'm going to choose me over choosing you because I believe I can do this and I'm going to go do it.
So give me an example in dad life.
In dad life of choosing yourself, I think a big piece of it is blocking out the noise and not worrying about what you do as a parent or what other people do as a parent. So we were talking about this the other day where I started to get immense anxiety because my kids aren't playing hockey. I grew up playing hockey, and in Minnesota, hockey is everything. And like, I put the stress in me because other parents are like, oh, do your kids play hockey? No, they don't anymore. And people kind of look at you, and you just got to choose. You just got to choose yourself. Like I'm comfortable. Like my kids want to do what they want to do, and I'm comfortable with that. So I'm shutting out that outside noise. I'm choosing myself, and I'm chasing the dreams that I want to chase. So the dreams that I want to chase, like I want to be able to do athletics with my kids. So I'm getting them into sports, or they're actually choosing sports that I can go out there and play with them. So that's kind of on the dad side. On the husband side, I think it's, making sure that I'm choosing to do activities and keeping a mental headspace that's clear and safe. So I'm not, going back into the world of addictions or the world of whatever it might be, like knowing, like actively choosing to be sober today, actively choosing to be in a headspace that is good and putting my cell phone down because I'm choosing to be the best dad that I can be, as opposed to being this really shitty dad that's just on a cell phone constant.
Do you take learnings from this book and apply it to the husband side of things?
From the husband side, yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's more of on the entrepreneurial side, but you can apply it to everything of shutting down the noise. Other people are going to give you feedback, give you tips. And for me, I just go, hey, like, that's cool. One of the things I've learned in, men's group programs is take what you like, leave the rest. And so a lot of times that's kind of what I do. I've applied more of that to it. But from a choose yourself perspective, it's really just about, for me, having the confidence in myself to know that I'm okay and I'm good enough. And I don't need outside validation. I don't need other people to tell me I'm a good husband or I'm a good dad, because I know I am, and I know I can improve, but I know I'm a good husband, I'm a good dad, and I'm going to actively choose to focus on those things as opposed to choosing to focus on the noise and trusting someone else to my future.
Cool. Do you want to hear something crazy since you brought up hockey? I think it's crazy.
What's that?
So we had our coaches meeting last night for Wayzata.
Yeah.
So in the MITE program in Wayzata, how many kids do you think are playing hockey in the program?
272.
400 kids.
Holy smokes.
We have 400 kids. How many coaches do you think we have?
100?
196 coaches.
Wow.
I thought that was incredible. Do you want to know what really blew my mind? So there's tiers, right? There's mini mites at the very, very beginning all the way up to advanced mites. In the advanced team this year, we have some newcomers to the program. Who do you think is coaching the top Wayzata advanced mites team?
I think I know this because you said this. Isn't it Mike Modano?
Yeah.
A former NHL player, works for the Minnesota Wild.
Both of his kids are on the advanced mite team. And I don't know that this is true, but we were talking last night. His son supposedly just started like 9 months ago, because he just, like, I don't want to speak for Mike. I could be completely wrong here. I have no idea. But if that's true and he started 9 months ago, he's already one of the top skaters. Like, the sports thing, genetics is real. I'm just going to say.
I was going to say, I mean, obviously, I know some folks that are very tied into both collegiate and professional hockey. It's genetics. I mean, what, like 5 people from the same family played Division I hockey at an ultra high level?
Well, who started for the Wild last night?
No idea.
Vinny Lettieri.
Vinny started with the Wild?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that, right?
For those that don't know who Vinny is, he is the son of Lou Nanne, or not son, grandson of Lou Nanne. Lou Nanne is an absolute legend in the NHL, especially in Minnesota.
And then, I mean, you got young Lou and Tyler both played Division I hockey.
Yep.
I think another one of their cousins like played in ultra high level. Like
genetics.
It is a genetic thing because they are extraordinarily talented.
Yeah.
All right, but back on subject. So what's your second book from a dad, husband, entrepreneur perspective? Your second book you would tell anybody listening they got to go read.
I think from this really applies to all of them, and there's kind of a theme with the last book I picked. I know I sent you an email with a couple on there, and I'm going to go off cue. Atomic Habits.
That's a good book. That's a really good book. Why is Atomic Habits book number 2?
So similar to The Psychology of Money, if you take a step back and just think about anything that you're trying to achieve, right? Anything, literally any goal that you ever have, they all take time. And nothing happens tomorrow. So in Atomic Habits, it's talking about how do you build habits that stick for the long term, whatever the habit might be. But then it talks about goals and how to achieve things. And if you just take small steps every single day, right? If you get 1% better at something every day or 1% better every week, the compound effect of that is, I forget the number that maybe you know it.
It's staggering in the book. I mean, it's staggering.
A 1% increase in productivity on something you're working towards each week is like a 30 or 40% increase at the end of the year. So the example I always use is like, think about weightlifting, right? If you're just getting back into shape or just starting out and you use the bench press, right? Say you can only start with 100 pounds on the bench press. But if you get 1% better every week, what is that, 150, 160 pounds at the end of the year that you're able to lift? Do that for 2 years in a row. Now you started at 100. Now you're doing 200. Do that for 3 years in a row, right? Now you're at 250, 300 pounds that you can bench press just because you did one thing every day for a couple of years. That's how it works.
You know, it's such, for those that are listening that have not read the book, it is a phenomenal book. I find it to be challenging at times though, because you really have to, just like a good habit, you have to be dialed in. You have to be like, and he talks about habit stacking. Do you want to explain what habit stacking is?
Well, habits, go for it. You're already on the subject.
So the habit stacking is, you have this habit of drinking a cup of coffee every morning. It's a habit. Like it's just built into you. Every morning I get up after I work out, I have a cup of coffee. So a great way to build a habit, let's say you want to read 15 minutes a day. You say, as soon as I have my cup of coffee, I'm reading for 15 minutes a day. So you're going to build a habit off of an existing habit. And I was thinking about this. I was kind of laughing on this subject, talking to my wife about habits the other day. I have a tremendous and have had a tremendous amount of bad habits or addictions, whatever you want to call it. But I was very, very messy, very unclean, very just disarray, immature. And I met my wife, and first thing she's like, "Dude, you need to like vacuum your floors every night after dinner." I'm like, "What? Like once a month is okay?" And I actually quite frankly meant it back then because it wasn't a priority. But all of a sudden, my wife was on vacation for 7 days, and every single night I went through the exact same habits. Got the 2 boys to bed, went downstairs, did the dishes, wiped off the counters, wiped off the table, vacuumed the floors. Even though they weren't that dirty, I could have just been like, whatever. But it's this ingrained habit. So now to get other habits, I just need to build a habit on the back end of that habit that I want to do. So one of the things I talk about is reading. I want to read more. I love devouring information. I'm just fascinated by how much you can learn about interesting subjects. And so that's one of the things I said to my wife, once we're done, I want to just sit in the chair in the living room and read for 20 minutes before we go upstairs. So habits, Atomic Habits. What I know I just dominated that. Sorry. What were the biggest takeaways from that book for you other than the 1%? Because I think there's a lot of good information.
I think I vividly remember being in my 20s. Now this is pre all the technology and all the YouTube and being able to get information, in the snap of a finger. I remember listening once, maybe it was a seminar in college, or someone came in and talked about how you need routines. I wake up, I do this thing. I go through my day, I do these things. I do them every day. This is my routine. I remember thinking, that fucking sucks, man. Who wants to do the same thing every single day? And I actively was against routine for probably the first 30 years of my life. Because I was like, it's boring. That's mundane. I don't want to do that. And Atomic Habits, back to what I said, a few minutes ago, the only way to ever achieve and get good at things at all is to do them consistently. And so I understand why routines matter now. I'm still not great at them, but if there's something I'm trying to get good at and get better at, I have to do it many, many, many times throughout the week.
What is something that you're trying to get better at? What is something that, not foo-foo, stupid bullshit of like corporate America, but what is something in your life you want to get better at?
I mean, for me right now, it's running and trying to get better marathon times. And so if I work out every 4 weeks, I'm never going to get better, right? If I work out super, super hard for like 3 weeks and then I take 2 weeks off, I'm not really going to move the needle on getting any better, right? It has to be a consistent thing that you're committed to doing. However the program is, right? 3 times a week, 4 times, whatever it is. But you have to do it every week.
Outside of running, consistent. What is a habit that you want to improve?
Outside of running, I think the other habit that I'm trying to get better at is just like the show, being consistent with it. We record, we do the editing, like it all needs to line up as a habit.
I'm blaming you, by the way.
Why?
Every time I want to jam, you're like, you're angry, man. I know I am.
Yesterday.
I got a lot of shit I want to share with the world.
It yesterday. But, I mean, podcasting is business in general, right?
Yeah.
If you're a listener listening to the show and we put something out on a Tuesday, and next Tuesday you go to look for a show and we don't have anything, you're like, oh, maybe they're a day off. And then on Wednesday you look for it and it's not there. You're going to lose interest and move on.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done. So, like, there's, I guess, I don't know if you call that a habit as much as consistency is what I'm working on being better at in general with everything that we're doing.
It's a habit. I mean, it is.
But the big one, I mean, the one where I like write it on the board and like, this is what I'm working on right now, trying to get better at is running.
I like it. And you're getting better.
Trying to. Although these trips really, Florida was nice a couple weeks ago because it was still hot out and I could go run outside. But the Alaska trip really derailed everything. That was terrible.
Next year, before the marathon, don't go on a trip to Alaska. That's a habit.
Oh, man. All right, back to you. Book number 2.
I think that the second book is a nonfiction book, and it is a book that a friend of mine gave to me, and I was like, what the hell did you just give to me? I'm not going to read this. I started reading it, and I think in 7 days I'd finish. Like, I could not put it down. And it's a book called Endurance. Do you know what it's about?
No.
So Endurance is about Shackleton's failed adventure to the North Pole.
Who's Shackleton?
So Shackleton was the British explorer who wanted to go to did I say the North Pole, the South Pole? So the Antarctica, they went down there, they had their ship. Let me just tell you, like I started reading this thing, and I think he gave it to me because he knew I was going to be starting this business. And it is one of the best books I've ever read because it's about suffering, pain, sacrifice, obviously endurance, because what these guys went through, I don't know if there's anybody, if there are not anybody, very few people in the world would be able to survive what they survived. And it just kind of opened my eyes to, at the end of the day, I'm just building a business. And I mean, that is it. I'm building a business. And as a friend of mine said, he's like, business is a giant game. Some are good, some are bad. But after reading Endurance, not only do I have this profound respect for what these guys did and what they survived.
What was the big thing that happened?
They spent almost 18 months stranded in Antarctica, surviving off of essentially stored food that they rationed, living on the ice pack, so living on a sheet of ice that was floating through the Antarctic because their ship got stuck. They got their little boats out. They started moving across Antarctica or across the ice pack in these things, waiting for the ice pack to open. They spent an entire Antarctic winter on the ice pack, living in these makeshift huts that they managed to build, snuggling together because that was the warmth. Eating.
When did this take place?
The early 1900s.
Oh, okay, so a long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. And what amazes you is that you start reading this book, and I'm not going to give everything away, but like the mere fact that nobody actually died is astonishing. After that long, that cold, the amount of frostbite, one guy had a heart attack. But the ending, actually, I mean, I think my wife thought it was not, like, I started crying because I'm reading about this. I'm like, oh my God, like what these guys went through and how they were not going to give up no matter what. So without giving the whole thing away, they took these little like 20-foot boats that they had, maybe 30-foot, and they rowed through the most violent portion of the ocean anywhere in the world for like 12 hours. This is a portion of the ocean that is known for having 40, 50-foot waves consistently. I mean, it's where the two oceans it is nasty.
Yeah.
And these guys survived that. Soaking wet. Like, I mean, they didn't have Gore-Tex. They didn't have the technology. I mean,
sure.
It was their will to survive and their will to keep going forward.
The big thing for you in this book, then, the takeaway for anyone listening here is it's a mindset book. It's your situation's not as bad as it could be type book, or like what is the big?
I think number one, you learn about this amazing adventure that is folklore to some, but yes, 100%. It's a mindset game, and it's an endurance game. And I think about work, business, life. It's an endurance thing. At the end of the day, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be miserable stuff. But like, if your mindset's in a healthy shape and you know that you can get through it, life is going to be okay. If you are going to catastrophize everything that happens, like I have for the last 3 months, like it's going to suck. So trying to keep that positive attitude. And like, I also like to think oftentimes like my life, no matter how shitty I think it is today, isn't as bad as what the guys on Shackleton's boat or people in certain areas of the world are going through every day. And I'm not saying that for like, I'm not trying to compare. I'm just saying like,
just mindset.
Everybody has a different mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
So needless to say, amazing book, unbelievable what those guys went through, and highly recommended if you're looking for a great nonfiction book, but also just an awesome book to like, how do you get through it? And also you learn a lot about Shackleton's leadership. And I think that's the other fascinating part about it is like, you'd think I think it was like 27 guys would all be best friends, but there's a lot of guys that didn't like each other because they all served a different purpose. And the funny part, again, this, like, I always go back to this, like, one guy jumped on the ship as a stowaway.
Oh, bad decision.
It's where my mind always goes to. I'm like, man, how much do you think that guy regretted that decision the moment that the boat got stuck in the ice pack? And they're like, oh, we can get out in like a week. No,
or like the people who jumped on the Titanic last minute when they weren't supposed to be there.
Like,
whoops.
So I guess, moral of that story, like, don't make a last minute decision to jump onto something. So
that's going into the Arctic.
I mean, but again, like my mind always goes to in that book, and like just thinking about like how tough mentally you had to be versus how tough we are mentally today, because most people, even really poor people in America, there's access to, like, there's stuff everywhere that you can tap into. There's resources, right? When you're stuck in the Antarctic and you have to kill penguins and seals to get oil, to use their blubber to make fuel, like, that's a whole different level. I mean, it's and just knowing like there's no radio, there's nothing you can do, right? I mean, today, like, you'd send an SOS and a helicopter would be there in a day. This is pre-technology. Like, man, our lives are easy is the other takeaway. Like, our lives are freaking easy. All right, book number 3.
Book number 3, I'm going to go fiction. So the first two are nonfiction, obviously, very focused in the thing that they're talking about. Book number 3, fiction book called The Alchemist. Have you read it?
Sounds like a Breaking Bad book where we're going to learn how to cook meth. Is that
Have you
true?
read it?
No.
You haven't read it?
No. You posted about it the other day, right?
I did post about it the other day. It is a very short book. It is a very quick read. But the story itself is, it's wonderful. It's going to grab your attention. You're going to read the whole damn thing. And the message throughout the book, I don't know if it is technically like a religious book of some sort. It feels like it is with some of the stuff they talk about. That's not the point. Essentially, it follows a boy, a younger shepherd. He has a flock of sheep, and he lives in Spain, and he goes through the countryside as a shepherd doing his thing, and he comes across cities, and He meets a person who's not really a person. I don't know what this thing is. It's a being. It's whatever. Maybe it's God. Maybe it's just the universe. They don't really explain it. But he starts a relationship with them, and this guy starts explaining like, hey, you're a shepherd, and you always dream about crossing the sea and doing all these big things. Why don't you do it? Well, I can't because I got this, and I got the sheep, right? And it goes into the typical why you can't do something. And usually there's got to be a push and a reason to make it happen. And so it's this guy, he has a dream, he goes after it. It's really hard throughout a lot of the stuff. At some points through the story, he achieves what he's trying to achieve. He could live a very good life. Like, it's pivoted a little bit. He's doing amazing things. It's wonderful. He's like totally comfortable, could give up. And then all of a sudden he's reminded, wait, man, I've got this giant dream in my life. I can't quit now. I can't give up. Just because I'm comfortable here doesn't mean that I stop. And he keeps going. And without giving up too much details, because it's quick. It'll take you a couple hours to read this thing. There's a part in the book where I literally was like, I don't know the right word to explain it right now with my brain being stupid, but he's at this point that he's trying to reach, and this other person comes and messes with him and does this stuff. And it turns out, and I don't think I'm trying not to share too much, but this person was on the one messing with him was on the same quest, and he gave up, and his life turned to shit because he just didn't take that extra step to figure out what to do. And Santiago then realizes like, oh shit, that could have been me. I could have given up at this point too, and I'm not going to. And so he makes decisions, and it's just it's a cool story on just keep going, chasing after that thing you're chasing after.
Matt, I'm gonna have to read that, because I think back to kind of my discussion earlier this morning where I was on a roll about how stupid some of these groups are. Human nature is not to want to support other people. Human nature in a lot of these groups is envy, jealousy. It's like, why, when someone has a really good idea, so when RX bar shot to fame, what did you hear everybody say?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know how they got bought for $200 million. They're shit. They're disgusting. Blah, blah.
That's not what people said in the food industry.
That's what everybody else that wasn't in the food industry that heard about it, that wasn't core food, was saying. No different than any other not overnight success, but a massive success. People want to tear you down because they're envious of what you have. And so those people, if you listen to the naysayers, you listen to the people, you got to realize, and maybe I'm overstepping what that book, like, it sounds kind of like, keep your eyes on the goal and realize that people are going to want to derail you, but you can't let them derail you.
Yeah, I mean, that is part of the story for sure, but I think the bigger part of the story is that the person that's going to derail you the most is you.
Because you get sidetracked worrying about what other people think and what other people do.
Or you just don't believe in yourself enough to actually make it happen, right? Like, so in this book, Santiago's dream, he lives in Spain. His dream is to see the pyramids. But he doesn't actually know what that means. He doesn't know where they are. He doesn't know how to get there. He doesn't understand. You're in Spain. You got to travel across the African deserts. You got to travel across the Mediterranean Sea. You got to do all of this stuff to get there. You don't have a map. You don't have a guide, right? Like, this book takes place in the 1500. Like, it takes place when there are no cars or planes or anything, right? And so at every step, he's like, who am I to go see the pyramids? Who am I to go do this thing? Maybe it's part of that imposter syndrome thing we've been talking about.
Sounds like I need to read this book, because that's kind of my everyday. It's
just interesting. And then, like I said, there's a part in the story where he makes some big decisions, gets to some point, and he's faced with a challenge of, I either turn around and go home, I've lost everything, or I figure out how to make the best of it. He figures out how to make the best of it, like, in a very huge way. And he becomes almost not royalty, but he becomes he could live in this big giant city forever as a trader doing all this amazing stuff, but he'd never be fulfilled. And he finds out that the person that he's working for had that choice too, right? 20 years ago, that guy he was Santiago. So he keeps meeting his future versions, who he could have been. Now that I'm talking through it, I didn't realize that until right now. He keeps meeting people who, hey man, you can do this path and you can live like I'm living now, but that's not what you want, so you got to go down this other path.
How do you apply that to life?
my takeaway reading that book was like, first of all, there's always shit. There's always reasons why you can't do things. We were on vacation last week with my family, and I'm talking with my nephew. My nephew's 16. And, he's a good kid. He's a smart kid, but he doesn't have guidance. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He doesn't have the support to go make shit happen the way that I do, right? For whatever reason, right? This is not a bash on anybody. It's just the reality. Every time I talk to him about anything that he wants to do, his immediate response to me was, well, Uncle, I can't. And here's why. It's always I can't because of this. I can't because of that. I was telling you, he wanted to start working out, right? And well, Caleb, what are you going to do to work out? Well, I can't. I don't have time. Okay, well, let me see your phone. How much time are you spending on TikTok? Almost 4 hours a day, right? Like you can do things if you realize that you can. It just might mean that you're going to have to live life a little bit different.
Everything requires some form of sacrifice or choice. The old guy used to work for barbed wire teddy bear, kind of a big asshole, but also smart. He always said, it's what he said, but it's a fact. What's your only non-renewable resource in the world?
Time.
So he goes, if you want to work out, what are you willing to give up in order to work out? So he always gave the example. He goes, he was a loyal 10 o'clock news guy. He'd watch the 10 o'clock news every night. He'd be up until 11:30. And he goes, I wanted to start working out at 5:30 in the morning. Well, in order to do that, I had to go to bed an hour earlier. So I had to give up watching the 10 o'clock news. And I think there's a lot to be said about that and how you can apply that. So like kind of like the Santiago, what are you willing to sacrifice to get to the goal that you want?
Yeah, there's tons of examples in the book about that.
Exactly.
Like he has to make choices. I'm giving up this. I'm giving up my old life. I'm giving up these things. But it is because I'm going after this bigger vision, this bigger dream, my lifelong quest.
I like it.
All right. Book 3, Ole.
I go back and forth on these two because both of them are profoundly impactful. I would say from if I were to do just purely an entrepreneur standpoint, Skip the Line by James Altucher. I'm just going to give a brief plug for that because it's an amazing book that basically says you don't need to wait for 35 years to become the CEO of a company. You can go start your own company. And particularly now, all the expertise is out there. You can go find it. You can go do it. It's really just, do you want it? So for those of you that are out there that are in corporate America and you're like, man, I hate this, like, go read that book. The one that resonates, though, the most with me, and the one that I think about all the time, is the 4 Agreements. So it is
Don.
What's up?
Who's the author?
That's a good question. Let's Google that here real quick. Sorry for the silence.
I think The Alchemist is a Brazilian dude. I think the 4 Agreements. Don Miguel
Ruiz.
There you go.
The 4 Agreements is a book that I think everybody should read. Now, there is a religious overtone to it. So if you're not religious, you may be turned off by that.
I don't think you will be.
But I just think it's an amazing book that is got a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So I'll just go on, a couple of things that I think about a lot in that book. Number one is, don't take anything personally. And he talks a lot about there's white magic and there's black magic with words. And people love to use black magic. They love to tell you why you are not enough. They love to tell you why something isn't nice. They love to tell you how much better they are. That is purely black magic. Like 80% of the spoken word, or he has got some absurd number, is black magic. It's people telling you, like, they're talking about how great they are. And they're saying that because they're trying to justify them, and they're actually trying to, make you feel inferior because that's going to make them feel better. So that's a big piece. So understanding that you really should not take what a lot of these people say to you personally, because most of what people say is just bullshit anyway. They're saying it. They're using dark magic to try and control you. So I think that is an incredibly powerful piece. I also think the first one is be impeccable with your word. And that one to me is the most profound because I have a long history of really disliking myself and really in putting myself down, demeaning myself, self-deprecating, and just saying a lot of very bad things to me. And being impeccable with your word talks about, it's not being impeccable with your word, not saying like, Matt, we're going to lunch at noon. I'll be there at noon. It's really this inwardly focused agreement you have to have with yourself that you're not going to say negative things to yourself and you're not going to be mean to yourself. When you think about that, Matt, that is kind of the golden rule if you want to enjoy life, right? You can't just beat yourself up. You can't throw yourself under the bus. So what does that do to you? If you throw yourself, if you make a bad decision, you dwell on it, what's that going to do to you?
You'll never take action. You'll never get over it. You're just stuck, focused on one thing. Like, just move on.
Bingo. And I think that's the piece that I've struggled with to apply that to real life, right? I've told myself, how many times have I told you, Matt, like I don't have expertise. I don't have, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a registered dietitian. I can't talk about that. And you're like, you can.
Yeah.
You can go out there and do it. But I've told myself my head trash has always been, well, you're not, why would anybody want to listen to you? And that prevents me from taking action. When in reality, the most common thing I hear from my network was, man, I wish you would share your opinions more often because it's really refreshing to hear how you think.
I agree with what you just said right there. It is refreshing to hear how you think. You are you.
Except for when except for when I go ballistic at 8:27 in the morning.
I think the general statements of everyone and everything is the part that I push. I don't mean to push back. It's like a emotional response.
But you know what though? That is something that I've gotten better at over the last couple of years, not making these broad-based generalizations. Part of that is, and this is like, this goes back to this, like that was me upset with myself, so I'm going to tarnish other people, right? That was me using black
magic.
That was me using black magic this morning to make myself feel better because I'm in a shitty position. So.
Real life example of the book in practicality.
That was 100%.
I think the
exactly that.
There's I know you'll get to the other agreements. I think a lot of what you're talking about though falls under the fourth agreement. I think to be impeccable with your word, to me, and I don't mean to steal your thunder on this book, but I love this book too. It literally means be impeccable with your word. If you're going to tell someone you're going to do something, do it. The reason why that is so goddamn important and so simple is that in business in particular, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. People don't follow up. They don't follow through. They don't do what they say they're going to do. It is mind-blowing to me how many people cannot follow through on what they say that they're going to do. And I struggle with it too. It is as hard for me as hard as it is for anybody else. But it's like the easiest way to differentiate yourself from anyone else is just, hey, I said I was going to get back to you in 24 hours. I'm getting back to you in 24 hours.
But you know what? We've got so much crap coming at us, and we all think like, oh, that's more important. No, they could impact me. And I think like when you unpack that baggage, excuse me, of that book, I think it's wild how often we are not impeccable with our word because we say something to you, and then someone with more power, more prestige comes along, or we perceive it that way, which is kind of the whole book's point. And so we give up on that, and we just go over here because we're like, oh, well, it is an awesome book. I won't go into the third and fourth agreement. I'll let you.
Well, you gotta say them.
So the third agreement is don't make assumptions, and the fourth agreement is always do your best. Which
always do your best is the one I was thinking of when you're talking about beating yourself up.
I think like if I unpack that one real quick, when I think about always doing my best, over-committing and setting too lofty of goals prevents me from being able to do my best. When I look at my world in my former life before starting Switchback, I set these outrageously high goals every year, partly because they wanted you to have them. But
you're talking the old career?
Yeah. And I would look at that number and I would panic because it's a big number. And then all of a sudden I would go, shit, I don't know how to get there. I can't do that. Like, and I would just panic. Whereas if you break it up into these smaller, more reasonable, more
atomic habits,
rational goals, exactly, you're going to accomplish it. And you can be your best. I can't be my best. If I said tomorrow, hey, we're going to be $100 million, we need to be a $100 million company, dude, I'm going to lose my mind. But if I can say we're going to be multi-thousandaires here in the next month, we know how to get there. We know what to do.
Yeah.
And we can be our best. And I think that's part of the thing, like to clue you listeners in, Matt and I have a lot of discussions, particularly around my social media, and like one of the things that drives me up a wall, one of the things that like this entire my company Switchback was founded on was a lot of companies I don't believe are being their best. They're saying shit that preys on people's desperation to be healthier. And it goes for any industry, food, what doesn't matter. And that drives me up a wall because like I just want to put out a really good product that tastes good, that you know is really good for you, and let's move forward. And that's one of the challenges I have with everything is how do you be your best and have integrity while trying to point out how ridiculous some of these other things are in the world. So
yeah,
I think it's a challenge. It's a real challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I think if the book, it does a much better. I know we're going quick on how we're explaining it, but even like the black magic stuff that you're talking about, hearing Ole and I talk about it doesn't do justice to the way that the book explains it. And it's not a malicious thing. It's not a, like, the reality is black magic, the way people talk negative things, it is more prevalent than positive, but it's not necessarily because people are evil or they don't, like, it just, read the book, because I think it really, when I read that part in particular, it hit home for me. The A, don't take things personally, and B, the way people talk is just the way that humans have talked for eternity. It helps you reframe and it helps you react differently to people if you have that lens in a very, very good way.
Yeah, man, I think that's a good point. I mean, I don't think people are evil with their black when they use black magic. But as the book points out, it's that person trying to make themselves feel better, right? They're struggling. Usually when someone uses black magic, they're hurt. They're hurting, and they're trying to hurt you because it's going to make them feel better, which is completely screwed up.
Or they just don't understand how to do the thing that you're trying to do. And so their way of trying to protect you, quote unquote, is to not let you do it too, because they don't understand it and they're intimidated and scared.
That is the world of being an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to tell you how you're going to fail and you're going to screw up, and and when you look at it from that perspective, like they're trying to protect you, but they're not really trying to. Like they have good intentions, bad execution, and probably not the best thing. So I know we're a little bit over our time. Matt, do you have any final thoughts on books or book recommendations for our dads, husband, and entrepreneurs taking a listen?
I love this topic. I read way too. In fact, my wife told me many years ago, I was never allowed to go to Barnes and Noble ever again because I would buy. I mean, I love reading, so I think we'll do this again. This was fun. Maybe we do something that like is 3 dad focused books, 3 husband focused books, 3 entrepreneur focused books.
In the meantime, on that note, because we'll talk about this, How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids is a amazing book, and it is scary.
Haven't read it.
It's a great. We'll discuss that on a future podcast.
But no, I thought this was great. We say at the end of the episodes, join our group, join the Facebook group, the D.H.E club, whatever we have it called, because I mean this is the type of discussions that we'll have in that group, right? Like, give me some advice on X, Y, or Z. Is there a book recommendation, or how do I deal with this, or like these practical advices on dealing with all of the stuff we deal with throughout the day. And getting good advice on that versus just some random TikTok opinion. Usually you want to trust the source a little more.
We can go into that because I'm reading a book right now on the authority principle. And like, let me just tell you, like, it's insane how many people we trust when we have no business trusting. Like, we should have no business trusting them. So we're going to end it with this because it's kind of a funny comment. You've probably heard us say, like, Matt has turned me into a cynical asshole.
Cynical. The asshole part was your own doing.
No, that's all you, because you're always like, you can't do that. But it's so funny because like,
tell you can't.
We should go through life with more of a cynical lens on a lot of things. And actually, to wrap it up, read the book, The 4 Agreements, because maybe you'll be a little bit more cynical about how you raise your kids and beating them into submission into this societal view that we have, as opposed to like, just let your kids figure out life and support them, because they'll be a lot more creative and a lot more excited. So we're going to end it there. Follow us, like us, share this. We hope that you enjoyed this very good podcast on books. Let us know what you think. Reach out to us. Please read them, and we'll be back In a couple days, the new podcast.
All right. See ya.